We've got a real treat here on SportsWire Radio on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and sportnarium.com/player. I could not think of a better way to kick off my 3-year anniversary with the Sports Report and News Report, and speaking with somebody right now who's attracting a lot of attention all over the country. He is in one of the hottest races in the country right now in the 7th Congressional District in Colorado. And of course, he also, in his own right, did a lot for our country. We're very grateful for all that he did for us, for giving us this opportunity to speak with him as he served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with him here. And without further ado, here on the News Report, the #1 global news show, candidate here for the 7th Congressional District of Colorado, Erik Aadland.
I love that, Tom. Thank you.
How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I just got off a call with about 11,000 people. I had a telephone town hall meeting from just went an hour, so I got a little break before joining your show. Had a phenomenal audience, so I'm pumped. I'm
very pumped to have you. This is a big deal for us because it's not every day that you get a chance to speak with somebody that could go to Congress and do the things that we need to save our country and especially get the great state of Colorado back. And just like where we want to get our Broncos back on track, we want to get, obviously, Colorado on track, and especially the 7th Congressional District. And Erik, obviously, it's a tremendous honor to have you here on the News Report. And obviously, you were running in the U.S. Senate race for a long time here. But this opportunity, I think, this opportunity, which serves you much better, and especially now of the news of Congressman Perlmutter is no longer running for re-election. Talk to me about this race and what got you in. And congratulations, because you ran Congressman Perlmutter out of town, clearly.
I'm taking full credit, Tom, because I put my heart and soul into the U.S. Senate race, but in the midst of that, I was redistricted into District 7. This became the clearer path to be of service to Colorado and the service of this great country. And I literally found out the news. I land in Washington, D.C., had my phone off. I turn it on. It starts blowing up. So I'm sitting there on the tarmac as we're taxiing, and I find out the news that Ed decided to retire. We're thrilled about it. And my timing being in D.C., there was a lot of excitement. I met with the National Republican Congressional Committee, met with Chairman Tom Emmer, met with some other congressmen and women, including Ken Buck and Lauren Boebert and Jack Bergman, and they were thrilled and excited that this is now an open seat. They see that it's winnable. It was winnable before, and we weren't scared of Ed Perlmutter. We're certainly not scared of any Democrat challenger. This is our race to win, and we're going to go out and take this seat. And I think we win 5 of the 8 congressional districts in Colorado.
I think no question, if you look at the redistricting and kind of in a way, this commission usually, and I'm in New York, and these commissions have all been tilted toward the Democratic Party, but in Colorado, they actually kind of were pretty fair right down the line. And it gave us here this opportunity that you could go into Congress. And one of the reasons that I think that you got a really good shot at this race, in addition to the fact of your background serving this country, obviously running already across the state, running for the U.S. Senate, is that I think independents, which make up a large swath of the Colorado electorate, which tilted, to be fair, they tilted toward the Democrats heavily in 2018 and 2020. I think they're coming back to the Republican column because of the fact that right now the biggest issue in everybody's minds is inflation. And I know that you're going to tackle it when you get to the majority.
I mean, and I think you're right. I think that's our opportunity. Independents generally think for themselves, and they're seeing what's going on, from the disaster on the southern border to out-of-control crime in our cities to the disaster in Afghanistan to, as you mentioned, skyrocketing in inflation. These things are impacting everyday Coloradans. 44% of District 7 is independent voters. It's about 26% Republicans, 28% Democrats, something in that range. And they're smart. I think in 2020, there was a backlash against President Trump for whatever reason. In this case, Trump is not on the ballot. We're going to stick to the issues that are affecting everyday Coloradans and Americans. And if we do that, we be the adults in the room. We come with clear, positive solutions to these issues, because these issues honestly are contrived. They're a direct result of failed government policy. We can pin it right on Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all the Democrats who are driving us in the wrong direction. We've got all the resources, we've got all the right policies, we've got to present them, we've got to have the right messaging, and we win this district and we win several others.
Absolutely. And I was talking with you off the air, and this reminds me so much of the 2006 climate, especially in Colorado, where the Republicans kind of lost their way a little bit, just like the Democrats lost their way, because the Democrats talked about that they had a plan to get us out of COVID. They had a plan to bring everybody together. They were all going to be unifiers. And just like in 2006, where the Republicans lost their way, I think the Democrats have lost their way. And I think that your race is very similar in that climate where people will look at it on track and say, you know what? Okay, Congressman Perlmutter always won by 20 plus points, but don't forget, he was a wave baby himself. So
well, that's right. He entered in 2006 or 2007,
yep.
and the district, he's been in office since then. But with the redistricting, it's a totally new district. 60% of it has changed. So I think he was concerned by the redistricting. He recognized that he had to work much harder to retain his seat and that his policies weren't working. I mean, he was voting 95% of the time in line with Nancy Pelosi with some of the most radical policies we've ever seen. He saw the writing on the wall. He didn't want to go kicked out of his high office into the basement with a Republican majority. That's what's coming. We know that we're going to be on the offensive, and we have a lot of reversing to do with some of these failed policies. We've got to get them in order, and we've got to stick to the issues.
And I think that you have a plan to do that. And I think that you recognize when it comes to another issue that we really need to address, whether it's in Colorado or also whether it's abroad in this country, is the COVID mandates. And I really feel that you get in there and everybody says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Just like when the Republicans took in power in 2010 and 2014 fully, and just like when the Democrats got power before they took the White House in 2006, they claimed to do all these things and it didn't work. If you get in there, you got to make sure that some of these restrictions, these ridiculous restrictions, which in my state, New York, hasn't worked. They've only made things worse. You got to go up in there and make sure that people can make choices for their own, not with what we're dealing with, even in Colorado.
Well, we can see right now that these mandates didn't work. Not only were they unconstitutional, not only did they hurt our economy, not only did they hurt children in a way we haven't even recognized yet in terms of the psychological component, the educational component. We can see right now with the Omicron variant how COVID is spreading. The mask mandates, the lockdowns, these restrictions, they do not work. We can look to Florida and other red states as an example of what does work. We need to recognize the science, the true science that recognizes how effective natural immunity is. And at the end of the day, I'm going to protect the primacy of the individual. This country was.
Okay, it looks like we just lost Erik Aadland, candidate for Congress. We're assuming that there is some technical difficulty. So if you are listening to this on sportnarium.com/player or watching this on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, we'll wait for Erik to come back on here. It looks like his screen might have frozen. That does happen from time to time. I guess that is the magic of technology. And obviously, again, if you want to follow Erik Aadland, please do so at aadlandforcolorado.com. Also, make sure that you give him a follow also on social media, because you definitely want to keep up to date with all the great things that he is doing. It's at Aadland for Colorado on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So we are just waiting for Erik Aadland to come back on here. Apparently, he got disconnected, so he might want to come back and reboot. So we're just waiting for him. I am the station manager here of SportsWire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. We are here waiting for Erik Aadland, who is running here for Congress in the 7th Congressional District here. So just hang on tight here. And it looks like here we have just received word. and it looks like that his internet here from Erik is a little bit laggy, and that happens all the time, ladies and gentlemen. I am in New York, and I can certainly sympathize that, but obviously this is really one of the races that you're going to really want to see. And there he is. He is back by popular demand. Erik, I thought maybe Congressman Perlmutter was maybe wiretapping your internet. I thought maybe one of the Democrats was going after you. I thought, what did we do now? Maybe the governor's worried about you, because we know that if you win this race, you're going after Governor Polis, and his reelection chances are going to be severely diminished because of you winning here. So I'm glad that we talked to you.
I'm always suspicious of Big Brother, when we start talking about certain things, and I can't say what happened. I'm sorry I lost.
Well, listen, certainly I know also you weren't involved in the Broncos finding a new head coach. That I'm sure you weren't. They weren't contacting you about that here. But obviously, good to have you back here.
Thank you.
Again, we've talked about some things that are important. Obviously, again, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to going out there and fighting for these ridiculous mandates to end, when it comes to small businesses, indoor mask mandates, these poor children. I think that's what bothers me most, when I see 3 and 4 year olds wearing masks, and I see that kids now have to get booster shotted. I mean, it comes to a certain point that stuff needs to end. We need to acknowledge that all these things need to end. But I'll get back to that, but I also want to talk about your background in serving this country. For those who are listening to this and watching that don't know, you served our country in Iraq and in Afghanistan. You've seen what has happened under this president and his failed foreign policy, where right now we're really, really in trouble, not just in Afghanistan, but I think about Russia, I think about China, I think about all abroad. Talk to me about your background in serving this country. And when you get into Congress, you get into the majority, how maybe we can fix some of the mistakes that we've made early on here in Joe Biden's administration.
Absolutely. So I'm a West Point graduate. Growing up, I grew up in an Army family. I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps and be an Army officer. Went to the U.S. Military Academy, graduated. I was senior at West Point when 9/11 happened. Spent 8.5 years as an active duty Army officer, did 2 tours in combat. I was a tank platoon leader in Iraq. I commanded a striker reconnaissance unit in Afghanistan. And then I spent a decade in oil and natural gas after that. But what is most concerning about what's happening now is the very weak administration we have that's emboldening our enemies. What's happened in Afghanistan cannot be forgotten. It should not be forgotten. It's a very significant event that will have long-reaching consequences. The world is a more dangerous place because of what happened there. That was disastrous. I'm outraged. I think all veterans are outraged, especially if they put blood, sweat, and tears into the soil of Afghanistan. And it was totally unnecessary, but what it's doing is emboldening China, emboldening Russia, emboldening Iran, and we're more likely to enter into a global conflict now than we have been in decades. And having seen the horrors of war and seen the psychological and physical trauma and on the battlefield, I want to avoid war at all costs. I believe in peace through strength, but it takes a strong leader, it takes a strong commander in chief, and it takes a strong military in order to project that power so that we don't get entangled in war. And that puts our enemies on notice. And right now, they're salivating. They're saying, what can we do to take advantage of an incompetent president who has no idea what he's doing? And we've got to reverse that situation. As in Congress, with my experience, I hope to be on the Armed Services Committee or on a committee that can influence either national security policy or energy policy, because they're very closely interlinked. But what happened in Afghanistan is unconscionable. I'm going to find out what happened as a congressman. I want the truth, and I demand answers, and so do the American people.
And also, Colorado is a state that has a very, very large military population. So I think also personally, it would mean a lot more in that sense because of your background. It gives you a very, very unique pulpit that I think is really going to be one of your strengths, in addition to obviously your focus on inflation, obviously your focus on energy independence, but also on top of the fact that you are a veteran with a state that has a large, large military population.
Absolutely. There's hundreds of thousands of veterans in Colorado. There's a significant presence in Colorado Springs and a number of Air Force bases. there's a strong military presence, and we want to keep it that way. We should have fought to keep Space Command. That was a failure of our senators, Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper. The Space Command should reside in Colorado, but nevertheless, I represent veterans. I represent those who served. I want to take care of them. Veterans cannot be forgotten for their sacrifices. We've got an epidemic of homelessness and joblessness within the veteran community. We've got a out of control suicide rate. Last time I checked, I think it was over 22 a day. We've got to take care of our veterans. I'm going to do that from Congress. I'm going to strengthen Veterans Affairs and make sure that bureaucracy is efficient and functioning to serve our men and women who have served.
Absolutely. And those are reasons why, again, if you aren't following Erik Aadland for Congress, please go to Aadland for CO on Twitter, Instagram, like his Facebook page. Get involved, especially if you live in the state of Colorado or nearby in the 7th Congressional District, because this is going to be one of the races to watch. If the Republicans get the House back, it's going to be because of our guest right here, Erik Aadland. He's the guy right now. He's the guy who was running for Senate, and he's gone to Congress now. He's going here with a legitimate mission. And I am the host of the news report and the station manager here of SportsWire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what I hear from when it comes to speaking with Erik Aadland, I know I do, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You go to sportnarium.com/play. Listen to all of our great shows, all of our great content. Also like our page on Facebook at SportsWire Radio. And keep up to date with all the great things. We will have more news and information, of course, when it comes to Erik Aadland and all the great things that he is going to do for us. And listen, we're less than 10 months away from Election Day. 2020 might have been yesterday, but we're going to 2022. And I got a feeling there was one color of waves in 2020. There's going to be another one in 2022, and it's going to be because of Erik. And Erik, that's why I'm so fascinated about this race, because I know we touched upon the fact about how the Republicans lost their way, the Democrats lost their way, and so many independents in this state. But I really feel like you win this race. Right now, Colorado is a one-party state, literally. I mean, every office, every position, except for a few of our congressional members, it's all Democrat. You win this race, I think we're going to get the majority in the House back. I think the state Senate in Colorado, which we know is 20-15, I think because in this district, we know it's going to be a battleground. You're going to bring us back the state Senate. You're going to bring us back some of those state offices. I think about Attorney General. I think about Governor.
You're putting a lot on my shoulders.
Listen, I worked in politics. It's always the guy at the top of the ticket that's going to be the rising tide that lifts all boats, to quote Reagan. I feel like you win this race, we're going to get Colorado back. Do you feel like that this is now a bellwether seat in terms of us getting our state back?
I think it is a bellwether seat, and I think that's why the National Republican Congressional Committee told me in Washington that they've elevated it on the target list, especially with Ed Perlmutter choosing to retire. He saw what was coming. I like to say I scared him out of the race because I entered when he was the incumbent, not knowing that he would retire.
Well, we do a lot of wrestling here on the station, and to quote the words, you ran him out of town, basically. That's what we use in wrestling. We're very big in wrestling, so we're actually number one in 4 towns in the UK for it. So
fantastic!
So we have a lot of fans out there, but you ran him out of town, so obviously you did it, Erik. Congratulations.
Well, whether I did or not, I'm taking credit for it because it followed shortly after me entering the race. I don't think he was ready for the kind of fight we're going to bring. We're running a professional campaign. I've got a fantastic team behind me. I'm getting support from the state of Colorado for this race. It's been humbling and uplifting to see the kind of support I'm garnering from, and yours as well, Tom. I'm very thankful for that. I do think it can be a bellwether because it's representative of the state of Colorado. It's 44% independent. And Colorado has a libertarian spirit.
I'm very libertarian, so that's why I was so intrigued by this race in the state. I don't always back Republicans. That's why I was very intrigued about you.
We love freedom in Colorado. We want to live and let live. We don't want the government boot on our neck at every turn, and that's the way it's been for a couple of years. And we are ready to reclaim our independence. We know that Republicans come with solutions to these problems. And in my case, I'm not doing this for personal gain. I'm doing this because I want to serve the people of Colorado. I never planned on being a politician, never really planned on running for office, but I see the crisis we're in. And I served my country on the battlefield. I put my life on the line for this country because I love this country. I love the state of Colorado. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure we have good governance that serves the people.
Absolutely. And I have a good feeling of that. And I'm always happy to hear when somebody says that they're not a career politician, because I think that's the problem. That's been the problem with Democrats and Republicans. I think about when the Republicans in 2006, when they lost their ways with the bridge to nowhere and all the earmarks. And I think about even in 2018, how we didn't focus on what we needed to do. And then unfortunately, COVID got in the way. But there is one endorsement I wanted to mention that I know is important, and he was always somebody that was very independent. And you talked about the border. And this person, I couldn't think of a better person in terms of addressing the border. And he was talking about issues with the border when nobody was talking about them. And that was the former Congressman Tom Tancredo, ran for president back in 2007, 2008. How big is his endorsement? Because endorsements usually don't mean much, but this one means something because of A, his name recognition, but B, also because he was talking about the issues that you were talking about when nobody was.
Well, I have great respect for Congressman Tom Tancredo. He's been a mentor to me as I was considering entering the U.S. Senate race, and we talked at length about that. He endorsed me for the U.S. Senate race, and I was very, very thrilled to have that. But I got to say, Tom Tancredo has not endorsed me for the congressional race.
Okay.
I put him in a very difficult position. He'd actually already he'd endorsed my opponent, the Republican opponent, prior to me entering this race. And so he stuck to his guns, and I respect that. He has, if you can look in Colorado politics, he's expressed great respect for me. He's a man of his word. He didn't want to change
Well,
horses.
then I go back to my word that endorsements don't mean anything. So we're going to say endorsements mean nothing.
No, at the end of the day, I'm my own person. I report to nobody. Nobody owns me. I'm going to do what I feel is right every single time. I think that endorsements can influence certain people. In this case, I want you to know who I am and what I stand for. And my respect for Tom Tancredo endures, whether he endorses me or not. My positions never changed, regardless of who's involved with my race. And at the end of the day, if somebody comes to me and says, if you do this, I'll endorse you, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to do what I think is right. And I'm always going to do what I think is right, not what is expedient, regardless of who tries to influence me.
And listen, you're in a state that's, again, 45+% independent. They're not going to tolerate you being somebody that just goes right down the line and does what somebody tells you to because, special interest or endorsements. They'll throw you out 2 years later. You might win now, but you have to get reelected. And in order to accomplish things, you have to be able to get reelected. So that's what you should be doing. But I also did want to talk about in terms of what are some of the things that you would like to accomplish in Congress, especially getting into the majority? We know that's the way things are now. You win this race, you are going to go to the majority just because of the numerical numbers here. You
That's
win,
right.
you are going to be in the majority. So you're not going to be toothless and ineffective. Your opponents on the Democratic side win this race. They're not going to the majority mathematically, the way these things are going to shape out. So you go to the majority. Erik, tell me what's the one or two things that you are going to focus on as priorities when you get elected?
Well, first, I'm confident we're going in the majority, but I don't want us to rest on our laurels or be overconfident. This is our game to lose. So we must continue to press every advantage. We must take every seat. We want a commanding majority so that we can unroll some of the policies that have been so destructive to the American dream and our American way of life. And so I want a commanding majority. I want to win every seat possible so we have the initiative and the momentum to do what's right for the American people. I first and foremost want to get our economy back on track. It is critical to every component of national security, our energy policy, what's going on. We need to have a thriving economy so people are employed and industrious and fulfilled, and can have the means to thrive in Colorado and in this country. It starts with the economy. It fuels the military. It is foundational to everything we want to do. So we've got to stop the reckless and abusive spending that is driving inflation through the roof. We've got to get that back in order. The other things that are very problematic, we talked about the southern border. What's going on there is atrocious. Criminal elements are exploiting it. It's a threat to our national security. The federal government's number one responsibility, as per the Constitution, is to protect the American people and secure our borders. And what's going on in the South must be addressed immediately. We've got to address rising crime. Now, that's mostly a state level issue. I want the federal government, I don't want them telling state and local governments how to police, but I want to back law enforcement. I want them resourced so that they can be tough on crime so we have safe communities. There's no reason for the out of control crime. I blame a lot of these ridiculous attorney generals who are just derelict.
We have them in your state. We have them in my state. And they've gone out there and they've forgot about the fact that the bad guys need to be off the streets. And you can't have a functioning economy. You can't have a functioning state if bad guys are running around the streets and people don't want to go out at night, or people don't want to go out altogether. Between the Democrats' policies, which have been soft on crime, tough on restrictions and mandates, I mean, it's a double whammy for us, especially in your great state.
It's absolutely ridiculous, this whole idea of defund the police. Let's hurt our citizenry to allow criminals to roam free. It is so disgusting. I'm outraged by it. I love law enforcement. I have a lot of good friends and compatriots in law enforcement. I can relate to what it's like to put your life on the line for other people. We need to back the blue. We need to resource them. We need wise and educated police officers, and the policies that are being done in a lot of blue states are undermining law enforcement's ability to do their job. We've got to stop that nonsense and get them back on track and support them, not alienate them, not ostracize them. There's no reason for the out of control crime in Denver. I mean, like, the statistics are off the charts in Denver, and it's all because of these failed government policies that Polis and others are behind, like Mayor Hancock. From Congress, it's a matter of
tougher on mask mandates than they are on the bad guys. I mean, if you follow Twitter, I mean, it's bogus what's going on here. I mean, these guys are all tough guys when it comes to people wearing double and triple masks, but when it comes to bad guys robbing an old lady or shooting somebody in the street, I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. The world is turned upside down. We got to get back to common sense, and we've got to put our constituents first. And in many cases, Polis and people all the way from city council all the way up to the presidency are putting the American people last, and we've got to reverse that. I mean, I aim to serve my constituency, to do what's right for the people of Colorado and what's right for the people of this country. And that's what my job is. Any representative who doesn't do that shouldn't be in office. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
No, and you know what? You hold an oath, right? You go in there and you have to represent all people. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican, an independent. You have to go up in there and keep people safe. I never thought in my lifetime, and I realize I'm not old by any stretch, but I never realized in my lifetime the issue of police would be an issue where the Democrats are on one side and the Republicans are on another side. It's disturbing, and you know it better than anybody because you are a veteran. You have served this country, and we saw in a lot of ways how veterans have been treated, and it's disgusting, and I'm upset. And you brought up Governor Polis, and here's a guy that has wanted to have it both ways. He's tried to walk this tightrope when it comes to COVID. He's tried to walk this tightrope, but I feel at the end of the day, he's not doing his job. I know that you're running federally, but obviously the issues in the state do impact you, and I'm sure you have a thought or two on it, because when you go to Congress, Erik, I know that you're going to make sure that some of this stuff is washed away. Talk to me about maybe some of your disagreements with Governor Polis.
Well, I mean, we've talked at length about crime, which is out of control in certain urban centers like Denver and Colorado. That's where we are diametrically opposed. I want to be tough on criminals. I want strong law enforcement who are guided by principle to do the right thing. I think we've talked about that, but Governor Polis has also legislated against oil and natural gas in the state of Colorado. We had a proposition back in 2018 where the people of Colorado overwhelmingly came out in support of the industry in this state. They want the high-paying, skilled jobs that it brings to the Colorado economy. They want the $30 billion a year that it brings. And Governor Polis and the state legislature come in and pass legislation, Senate Bill 181 to be exact, which has undermined the industry and destroyed jobs in this state. And it was unnecessary. I've worked in this state. I've drilled wells in this state. We have to do it sustainably. We love the great state of Colorado. We love the beauty of its environment. We all want clean air, clean water, a clean environment. We want a place to raise our children. I'm going to fight to protect that. But at the same time, I want affordable gasoline and affordable natural gas. You should be able to heat your home and fill up your car without struggling. And Governor Polis just does not care about the people of Colorado. Neither do a number of these Democrat congressmen and women. I know our two senators don't, Bennett and Hickenlooper. We've got to run them out of office and do what's right for the people.
Oh, no question that, especially in your state, you really need and rely on energy because it's a significant portion of our economy. In other states, I get it. In other places, I get it. But in your state, again, it's a significant leg of your economy. And you mentioned some of the state Senate, and I know that one of your prospective quote-unquote opponents was a big part of that agenda and a big part of those things. And I think that that's where I'm going to ask you, where do you think you situate yourself over, let's say, your opponents in either race, either primaries? Let's go put it that way.
Well, I mean, what differentiates me from my opponents? Number one, I'm a combat veteran. So I've was prepared to give my life for this country, and I've been tested in that on the battlefield. I've got 2 Bronze Stars, 1 for valor. I'm not bragging there, but it indicates my level of commitment to service in this country. So nobody else in the race can claim that, and I don't expect anybody to enter who can. So I'm committed to service. I have a lifetime of service to this country. I grew up in a service-oriented family, and I'm committed to doing what's right and responding to a call of duty. For me, this is not about power or prestige or personal gain. I don't want to be a career politician. I want to get things back on track, and I want to come back to my mountain home and spend time with my kids. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to, as I was willing to risk my life in combat, I'm willing to risk my sacred honor and to put, to bring my family into the swamp to try and fix this. I'm going to come with real solutions. I'm an expert in energy policy. I don't think anybody else can claim that in my race. I'm an expert in national security, and I've been all over the world leading teams, multicultural teams of very diverse backgrounds to high achievement. I've been a leader of over 2 decades, 3 decades, probably, if you count all my time at West Point. And,
I know who you like when it comes to Army, Navy. That's what I will say. I won't have to ask you that question.
Well, this year, it should have gone a different direction.
I'm aware. Usually it's the other way around. For the last, 9 or 10 years before this year, we pretty much knew it was a one-sided outcome, but unfortunately it wasn't. I do have a few of my supporters who've actually chimed in, so I'm going to give you some good news, Erik. We have some people that have chimed in. First is one of my very, very good friends, Daniel Slavin, a longtime political operative here in New York, who's now in the great state of Florida because he fled this state like most normal people. He said, "You're a great speaker. You're strong, respected, and can lead." And somebody else I know very well who also ran here in my neck of the woods, here in Staten Island for the State House, Joe Tyrone, said he's very impressed with you, very impressed with your background. And Joe ran in my district here, which is very similar to your district, where it's sort of a moderate to maybe independent leaning to conservative district at times. So Joe did very well and came up just short, unfortunately, for some unfortunate circumstances we won't get into. But I have a feeling that you're going to get the job done here and do the right things here for our community, and especially the 7th Congressional District. I have another, let's say, about 10 more minutes with Erik Aadland. Very grateful for his time here. Very grateful for this opportunity. I could not think, again, of a better way to have our 3-year anniversary here on Sportswire Radio with Erik. And, of course, if you like what you hear from us with Erik Aadland, please give him a follow. Aadland for CO, Twitter, Instagram. Also, AadlandForColorado.com, I believe, is our website where we can get
the
more
website.
information.
Yeah,
donate and volunteer and, all that stuff. We have a great video about you that kind of shows your time from Iraq and Afghanistan to raising your beautiful family. So if you like what you hear, there's a lot of people I see tuned in on my radio dial and throughout Facebook and Twitter. Please go to this website, go to social medias, follow this man, because this is going to be one of those races that's going to be a bellwether here. This is a real big deal to have Erik here with us, and anytime he's spared, it is a tremendous, tremendous honor. So I want to make sure I also want to shout out another guy that's tuned in who also ran here, Eric Franklin, another libertarian guy, ran for city council here in Brooklyn. So we're getting a lot of our people in New York that are tuning into you. So you might have gained a few friends here in New York. So
well,
those of us that aren't like radical crazies, we've definitely, really appreciate what you're saying. But I want to ask, because I realize your time is very precious and it is a tremendous honor to have you. What would this mean to you if you're elected? What would this opportunity mean to you? If this power is vested into you, what would it mean to you to go to Congress?
Well, it would be a great honor to serve my country as a representative in Congress. That is a great privilege, but it comes with great responsibility. And I think a lot of our politicians have forgotten that it's a responsibility and a charge to serve the American people. They're supposed to go there as public servants, not to serve special interests, not to serve corporate interests, not to serve their own ends or become wealthy or powerful. No, this is an act of service, and it's also an act of sacrifice. It's not an easy job going to the swamp and dealing with all the vitriol that happens to occur in our present day environment. But I would view it as a tremendous responsibility and a charge between me and my maker. And at the end of the day, I have to look myself in the mirror every single time. I'm not going to sell my soul to be a congressman, but I am going to do what's right. I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to be virtuous and honorable and act with integrity and character. These are words that have become antiquated in our society. We need to bring them back. We need leaders of character running our government. And right now we've got a lot of corruption that's got to be cleaned out. And I intend to do that.
Oh, listen, the culture of corruption, that was the famous thing that the Democrats ran on in 2006 and 2018. They said, it's one party. We got to change things. And that's what happened. Listen, anytime you look at our country and when things were tough, right? I think about the early years of Clinton. I think about even the years with George W. Bush. I think about those first 2 years with Obama. One party. I've always been a believer that when one party controls things, it's never good for our country, because you need that balance. You need that independence. And me personally, I never like to back people that aren't honest. You're honest, just like an Eric Frankel listening who's honest, just like Joe Tyrone who's honest, and many people. I never like to bring people on that aren't going to do the right things. I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, and that's how you're going to win this race. I want to ask you this last one or two questions before we get closing thoughts. Again, tremendous honor. I appreciate the time you've given us. What would you want to say, though, to the people that voted for Congressman Perlmutter? Because there are people out there that voted for him in big margins. I know the district has changed a little bit, but this is still a district that had a lot of crossover voters. There might have been some independents. There might have been some Republicans even, a few of them, yes, that voted for Congressman Perlmutter. Those are the people that you need to win this race, to get into the majority. What do you want to say to those people?
Well, I want to say that I think that most people do what they think is right. And I think that there were probably a lot of people who voted for Congressman Perlmutter with the best of intentions. I mean, he is a nice guy. If you meet him, he comes across as a grandfatherly type figure who is going to do what he does come across as
Joe
honest.
Biden's a grandfatherly figure. It hasn't worked for us, man. It
Well,
has not worked for us. All right?
And in this case, I'm going to ask that everyone educate themselves and recognize that politics, whether you're involved or not, is affecting your daily life. And Ed Perlmutter's policies are hurting you. They're hurting Coloradans. They're not aligned with what is best for your children. And even though he's a nice guy and seems honest, and whoever is my opponent in the general election, they may seem like a nice person. I don't expect you just to trust me at face value. I want you to look at what I stand for. Check out my website. I'm pretty transparent with who I am, but you got to dig beneath the surface. In Ed Perlmutter's case, he voted 95% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. That puts him on the very far left of the spectrum. He might as well be a radical, even though he speaks like a moderate. And these policies are what's driving inflation, what's driving the disaster on the border, what's driving crime, what's making it harder and harder for people to thrive, what's jeopardizing our children's future. These policies are failures. And I want people to recognize that and do their homework. Get active. Don't just take me for my word. Understand what I'm saying and think for yourself. I am going to listen to all people, regardless of their party affiliation, regardless of their background or race, color, or creed. We need to have an open dialogue, and nobody can be a successful leader if they're incapable of listening. I'm not just going to listen to Republicans. We've lost the ability to have an honest dialogue in our country. We need to bring it back. We're all Americans. And by God, we need to freaking remember that we're all Americans. Stop the hatred. I'm so sick and tired of the hatred and the division. It is a lot of agencies taking advantage of that. Divide and conquer is the oldest military.
How about social media where it's all of a sudden, if you didn't post your
Sure.
N95 mask, you didn't tell everybody you were double and triple vaxxed, and all of a sudden you're anti-vaccine. And, well, what if I didn't want to tell anybody I'm vaccinated, or if I didn't want to get the booster, or whatever it might be? And we've lost our ways. Everybody said, oh, we're going to have civility, and Joe Biden hasn't returned that. The Democrats haven't returned that. They're all liars. So when you get in there, I know you're going to be different because, first of all, you're a veteran. You've served our country. You're not a career politician. You didn't work for the state house representative. You didn't work for the senator. So that's, to me, always important. You're going to go in there and you don't need this job. You're doing it for the people. Before I get closing thoughts here, and I'm sure you saw all the debate about the infrastructure bill. And I know, and I'm hoping that we don't get that bill because of the debt that it would add to this country. I would hope two things before I get closing thoughts. That bill, you'll make sure, in case it ever comes up, I don't think it will if you're in the majority, because I got a feeling you're going to make sure that never gets debated upon again. But also, you tackle the debt, because I am very concerned about, especially with all what the Democrats have done here in the past year with Joe Biden, that they have done here to add and add and add here to the debt here in this country. That weakens us just as much with foreign policy of anything else. So, last question. Closing thoughts, we'll get right after it, but two things are infrastructure. I'm sure you're going to make sure that never comes back, and addressing the debt.
What the infrastructure bill was nothing of the sort. Of course, we want to take care of our infrastructure. It's critical to our economy. We need good roads and solid bridges and we need a sound functioning economy that relies on solid infrastructure, and that's got to be addressed. This bill was nothing of the sort. It was a $2 trillion travesty. And I'm not talking about the Build Back Better plan, which is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Luckily, we had some strong Democrat senators in Manchin and Sinema that
who would have guessed that? It took Joe Manchin to block it, where we had Republicans that was saying, yeah, it's a good bill.
I have more respect for Joe Manchin than I do a number of Republicans, because
we'll get to that when you get elected. We'll focus on getting elected first, but I hear you.
But I respect people of courage who are going to do what's right, regardless of partisan politics.
Okay.
And we need that in both parties. But we need to have a dialogue between the two parties. I agree with you that we should never get too far to the right, and we should never get too far to the left. The truth is generally in the middle, and
Absolutely.
and I think it takes wisdom and character in both parties to provide leadership. Ronald Reagan was very good at reaching across the aisle, and I think we need to bring that back. Big tech is harming our society. The mainstream media has an agenda of its own. Excuse me. And the fact is we've got to address the problems in this country, but the wasteful and abusive spending has got to stop. The debt is a disaster that's being shouldered on our children. We've got to address that. That's an enormous challenge. We've got to face it. We can't keep running from it by raising the debt ceiling. We've got to address that and protect our children's future.
It's a big deal. Listen, I think everybody should be concerned and alarmed about the debt, because that's an issue that does impact our sovereignty. And
Yes.
before I get out of here with it, because again, I know your time is very short, you could not have said it any better. Reagan worked well with a Democratic Congress and a Republican Senate. I even think about Clinton when we did actually get the debt down. We did actually have balanced budgets. He did that with a Republican Senate and a Republican Congress. When both parties can work together, I think even Obama with the Republican House and the Republican Senate, it stopped all the craziness, all the nonsense. It ended. So we need that. You're going to be the guy that is going to restore it. This is one of the hottest races in the nation. Erik, I realize your time is precious. It is a tremendous honor to have you. I want to give you the floor now. I want to give you any closing thoughts, anything you want to say to anybody that is listening to this for the first time that has heard you, anything you want to say to the people of the 7th Congressional District, anything you want to plug that we haven't plugged, whether it's social media, your website, that we can get involved and help you, whether it's a donation, volunteer, make phone calls remotely, whatever it might be, I turn it over to you. It is a tremendous honor, and fire away, my friend.
Well, I'm thrilled to be with you, Tom, and I recognize that you come with wisdom, and that's an uncommon thing in media. You have that perspective that is based on a great understanding of politics through the years. You recognize that the divisiveness is probably our greatest threat to this country and our national sovereignty. You recognize that we need leaders in both parties who are going to work together to come with good solutions that serve the American people. And the fact is that we don't need career politicians who are only serving themselves, who are only pressing their own agenda. We've got to take charge as an American people and elect wise leaders. I'm striving to do that and running for Colorado's Congressional District 7. I want to bring wise leadership that honors the constituency in all of District 7. I'm going to be a representative of the full spectrum of the district, and I'm going to listen to people I may not agree with, and I'm going to thoughtfully consider it. And that's what we have to do. We have to restore our dialogue, and let's address big tech. Big tech is toxic. Big tech is driving anti-American sentiment. They are fostering a divide. They're same with the mainstream media in certain instances, and many elements of our government. They are dividing us against each other. And that is our greatest obstacle to thriving as a nation. And I believe we've got to come back to common sense. We've got to restore our education system to bring back critical thinking to our schools. We've got to stop focusing on the differences between people. We're all human beings. We've got to stop looking at the color of our skin and our gender and our sexual orientation. We've got to focus on what makes us similar. And I guarantee we are more alike than different everywhere on this planet. And I'm so sick and tired of I almost said an expletive.
Yeah, we are on the radio. We are on the radio. So we are a family station here. But I certainly know that.
I'm getting passionate. I am so tired of the divide. We've got to heal our wounds and come together as American people. And that's how we get back on track. We get our government run by people who actually care about their constituency and do the right thing. Democrat, Republican, Independent. We've got to dispense with all the labels in our society and do what is right. Not what is expedient, but what is right.
Not what the party boss tells you.
That's
not
right.
What the political ideology tells you. It's about the people. And we're not Democrat, Republican, Independent, Conservative. We're all Americans. And ladies and gentlemen, we are the greatest nation. Colorado is one of the greatest states. And one of those reasons is because of Erik Aadland, his campaign for the 7th Congressional District. For more information, I cannot stress enough here before we get out of here. AadlandForColorado.com. Go there. Get more information. This is the guy. This is the guy that's going to go up in there. We're going to remember this 10 months from now when he's in Congress. He spoke to us on little old SportsWire Radio. This is why you got to help him get there. Go to Aadland for CO, Twitter, Instagram. Follow him on Facebook because this is the guy that's going to give those independent solutions. He's going to be a guy that's going to make sure we get rid of all the mandates. He's going to make sure that we keep us safe when it comes to foreign policy, especially on the border, especially when it comes to Afghanistan and elsewhere. He's going to tackle the debt. He's going to make sure we're energy independent. He's going to make sure Colorado is a better place to live. He's going to give us a voice of sanity that is going to restore not only Colorado, but the nations. Erik, it has been a tremendous honor. I can't thank you enough. I know you have to go out there and probably raise like $10,000 more here in 2 hours or whatever it might be. I know filings in March, March 30th, so March 31st, whatever it is at this point. I know you got to do important things. It is a tremendous honor. I also want to thank your campaign team for setting this up with us. So God bless you, my friend.
God bless
Thank you for your service. I look forward to speaking with you soon here on the campaign trail and can't wait to have you back.
Thanks so much, Tom. You're very kind. You're a great American. I'm thrilled to be on your show. New York has a special place in my heart. I went to school there.
Okay.
I love you, New Yorkers. Not everyone, but.
Well, I would hope it's just me and some of my immediate supporters. And I would also remind you, we're heard in 13 countries. So we had people in Iceland tuned in. We had people in England tuned in just now.
Fantastic.
We had people in Sweden, Australia, states and countries right now that are probably more restricted than we are in New York. So they've heard your message. So, I mean, that's what my crack staff have told me. So 13 countries just heard you. So we definitely are getting your message out there. But I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. Looking forward to having you again here soon. And thank you, my friend, and we'll be in touch with you soon. And if you are on sportnarium.com/player, I thank you. You'll get back to some regular programming here and whenever I get off here. And then if you're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I'll be back here live tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 UK time, 7:30 Colorado time. I'll talk all things related to the NFL and maybe a thought or two on those Denver Broncos because they are looking for a coach. And I'll also be back later on in the day here before then with a major announcement relating to some other things. So hang on tight there. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager of SportsWire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, as we are with Erik Aadland, candidate for the 7th Congressional District here in the state of Colorado. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. We'll be back here tomorrow night on sportnarium.com, SportsWire Radio, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Tom.
All right, my friend, that's a wrap.